It's kind of confirmed when I got to the parking lot, and I realized the only parking left was on the baseball diamond. So thank all of you for making your way here tonight. You know, usually these public events, you start with a joke or something, some light banter, but there's no joking about what happened in Aliso Canyon and Porter Ranch. This is much too much serious to this community. So no jokes, let's just get to the business at hand. You know, we covered this story a lot at the beginning. You saw news media a lot in Porter Ranch for the first several months. And I know a lot of you got a little sick of us at one point, and I don't blame you at all, because it gets tough when you come back and we're asking you to relive your agony and discomfort every day. And then I must confess, the news media, to a great extent, lost interest in the story, which is a pity, because it's much too important a story to ignore, with long-lasting, potentially impacts here, affecting lives. Okay, yeah. I mean, just on a surface level, affecting property values, affecting where kids go to school, and it's a very complicated story. It deserves follow-up, and I'm so glad that this community is pushing forward and that we're doing this event tonight. So as you know, the featured speaker is going to be somebody I think is familiar to all of you, Dr. Jeffrey Nordella, who has put so much effort into tracking the medical impacts of the gas leak on Porter Ranch and the surrounding area. I've been asked to go over the ground rules for our Q&A session that's going to come up later in the evening. So let's get through this very quickly. First of all, I'm told there's a rule against slam dunking or hanging on the basket. Okay. I promise no jokes. That's as funny as I'm going to get tonight. All right, here we go. We're going to be collecting your question cards and use those questions during the session. I've been asked to ask you not to ask Dr. Nordella for a diagnosis of a personal medical condition. Try to keep your questions pertinent to the presentation and the larger issues here. The focus of tonight's meeting is not what should be done about Aliso or to dig into SoCal Gas Company or the political leaders or the government agencies. It's really a chance to get more information from Dr. Nordella and from the other experts who are going to be speaking here tonight. I'm going to be joined shortly by Diane Gonzalez, a very interesting woman. She is a doctoral student at the University of California at Berkeley, where I have a daughter who's may go there next year. She's studying the Berkeley right now, so I'm getting reports from the campus even as we speak on my text phone. Environmental health sciences. She has a master's degree from Loma Linda University in global public health, and she has such a long resume, I'm going to have to turn the page to get to the rest of it. Bear with me. Okay, we're going to start the evening. Our first expert, before we hear from Dr. Jeffrey and from Diane, from the Health Effects Officer at South Coast Air Quality Management District, Dr. Joe K. Goosh. Now, through a settlement, the South Coast Air Quality Management District has the responsibility for conducting a $1 million health study on the impacts of the incident at Aliso Canyon. And Dr. Goosh will provide an overview of the process and an update on the status of this health study. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's have a warm welcome for Dr. Goosh. And we get to hand off the baton.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I am just here to present one slide. So thank you and good evening. I'm sorry, I have run out of podium space to put down my papers. But I think as many of you guys know, we are initiating the health study using the $1 million from the settlement monies. Back in December, we held a public meeting to gather input from the public, and previously also we gathered a lot of input from scientists in the group that we call the working group. These are scientists from various agencies and also from local universities. together with all the input that was received from the public, both from the public meeting and then through folks who submitted their ideas and input and comments by email, we have gathered that information and we are presenting it, or in fact have presented it, to the Health Study Technical Advisory Group, which includes all of the scientists who participated in the working group, as well as 2 community representatives. And those 2 community representatives are Dr. Issam Najim and Dr. Jeffrey Nordella. We're currently scheduling the first meeting of the Health Study Technical Advisory Group to integrate all the input that we received from the public and then apply good scientific principles to draft the scope of this health study and draft the request for proposal, or RFP. Now, as far as the next steps, so after this technical advisory group has a chance to meet and discuss and draft these documents, our board will have to consider the release. Will have to consider the release of the RFP. This is standard practice for all RFPs that are released by this agency. Once folks, for example, researchers from universities can submit proposals on what they think would be the best plan to do a health study, given these parameters that are set forth in the RFP. And then those proposals are reviewed by a panel of experts in those specific areas. So that's the proposal review panel. After that, those proposals are scored and goes to the board for consider which proposals are selected for funding. And then following that, the researchers can begin the studies. So that is the extent of my update. I have gotten questions about whether the Health Study Technical Advisory Group meetings are open to the public. They will be open to the public. You guys will hear about it. If you have any questions or you'd like to get on like a mailing list for folks who are interested, I've got my email and phone number there. You can feel free to shoot me an email or or give me a call, and we'll be sure to add you to that list so you get a notification when the meeting has been scheduled. So that's all.
Dr. Gooch, thank you very much. Yeah, sometimes the wheels of justice and the wheels of science, they take a while to roll, but at least the process is underway now. Next up, I want to introduce Diana Jones. Ms. Jones is the Environmental Affairs Officer and Manager of Regulatory Affairs and Consumer Protection for the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, the Water Quality Division. Let's have a warm welcome for Ms. Jones. Oh, you're ready to go. You're already here.
He told me to be ready. Good evening. I am representing the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. As he said, I'm the Manager of Regulatory Affairs and Consumer Protection, and so consumer protection. That's why I'm here. And I'm here today to talk about some test results before, during, and after the Aliso gas canyon leak, and also explicitly to talk about and address the lithium levels in our water system. But let me first tell you a little about the regulations. LADWP complies with all federal and state regulations concerning the distribution and the production of its drinking water. And those regulations are set by the federal government, the US EPA, and also by the California State Water Resources Control Board, Division of Drinking Water, known as DDW. Some of you may be familiar with that. And DDW is responsible for permitting our facilities. They're also responsible for looking at the operations, maintenance, monitoring, and testing of our drinking water to make sure that it meets the requirements and also make sure that it's safe for us to distribute to you, our customers. The regulations are established based upon research, based upon information that they gather from research and data, and also there's a set of protocols that they follow in order to set these regulations. It's a public process, so you, our consumers, can actually be involved in that process when DDW actually sets regulations regarding the water that we are serving you. As new requirements are set, LADWP has to comply, and we do comply with those new requirements. Independent of the DDW, LADWP conducts extensive testing of its water. In 2016 alone, we collected 40,000 water samples. 40,000 water samples. And from that, we conducted more than 140,000 water quality tests to ensure that the water that we are providing to you is safe. None of the samples collected in 2015 or 16 indicated any negative effect from the Aliso Canyon gas leak. We're testing areas that are adjacent to and close to where the gas leak occurred, and none of those results indicate there's any negative effect. The results and the testing are included annually in our drinking water report, and we're providing a copy for you. If you'd like a report, it should be on the table in the back. This report is published every year, and the next report is going to be out in May of this year. Now let me talk a little bit about the sampling that we did before the incident, during the incident, and afterwards. We sampled and did special localized sampling in the Porter Ranch area. And what we found was that none of the constituents of volatile organic carbons, compounds, or hydrocarbons that were released from the gas affected the water. Also, the local regional water quality control board did some testing as well, and they found the same results, that there were no unknown constituents or unusual constituents in the water. And we provided this information to our local Los Angeles County health officials. LADWP system and the system that we incur to supply you the water has various different methods for protecting it from contaminated gas and or gas leaks like the one that occurred in Aliso Canyon. First of all, we have pressurized pipes, we have covered reservoirs, and the location. So all of the pipes that distribute our water are pressurized. So when any of the pipes are compromised, none of the material from outside in the environment or gases can get into the pipe. So that's one reason, that's one way we protect you. Another one is that our storage tanks are covered, so no compounds from the atmosphere can enter into our storage tanks. And specifically related to the area in the San Fernando Valley, we have no groundwater wells in that area, and the nearest groundwater supply well is 7 miles from the leak zone, and it would take over 180 years for a particle from that affected area to actually enter into our water system through the groundwater wells. The study that you'll be presented tonight will discuss trace elements of lithium in the drinking water. And it's important that we point out, and I'm pretty sure most of you know, that lithium is naturally occurring in the environment. It's in the soil, it's in the dust, it's in the groundwater, it's in surface water, and it's actually everywhere in the environment. It is a source that reaches DWP Los Angeles Aqueduct through our streams from the northern part of our distribution system of the Eastern Sierras. And we have streams there that has geothermal sources that actually could have lithium in it that would enter into our Los Angeles Aqueduct. It is important to note that lithium, it's not currently regulated by the EPA. There's no public health goals associated with it, and it's not considered a public health risk. At this time, EPA has not established any standards for it. But because we were made aware of the study, LADWP decided to do some localized testing of its water in the Porter Ranch area and in the vicinity. And because of this, we found that the samples we had collected between September and October 2017 were tested, and that was 54 samples. And the results range from non-detect to 107 parts per billion. And the results confirm that the levels found in the water are not considered harmful. They are trace amounts, and it does not adversely impact public health based upon the standards, based upon the quantities that we found in our water. Because lithium is naturally occurring, it's not uncommon to find it in our surface water and in our LA aqueduct because it is coming through streams and through geothermal sources that we know are part of our water distribution system. The water served to LADWP customers in Porter Ranch is safe. There is no evidence as to anything unusual or unharmful found in the water today. We have been testing the water since we were made aware of Dr. Nordella's study, and we are still testing the water. You as our customers can be assured that we are testing the water, we're monitoring it, and if there are any things that you should know about, we will definitely let you know, because we're just as concerned as you are if there's a problem or if there's an issue with our water. Thank you.
Ms. Jones, thank you very much. And we are going to ask Dr. Nordella about his findings with the lithium. It was interesting that he did find in his survey elevated levels throughout the DWP system, not just here in the San Fernando Valley at the north side of the valley. So that question will come up again. Before we introduce our keynote speaker tonight, a quick reminder that we're asking you to fill out question cards. We want to hear your questions tonight. You can get those cards on the tables alongside the far wall there, the tables with the green tablecloths. Vanna White there is showing us showing us where you can get the cards. So please do fill them out. And we've got more like cards as well. Your services are requested on the far side of the building. I think this woman has a future on Wheel of Fortune. Yeah, me too. And while we have a moment here, full disclosure, even though I did get that engineering degree at UCLA, how many days of my life do you think I worked as an engineer? Yeah, goose egg. Yeah, you get the prize. Okay. All right, let's move on. Let's hear, and again, you can get the question cards over at that table, but I think we all want to hear from our featured speaker tonight, Dr. Jeffrey Nordella. He's a family medicine specialist in Porter Ranch. He's been practicing for 35 years, which amazes me because he doesn't look like he's old enough to have been practicing 35 years. He graduated from the David Geffen School of Medicine at UCLA in 1983, specializes in family medicine. He was medical director of the Porter Ranch Quality Care and Urgent Care and Family Practice from 2009 to 2017. And I think all of you know the story. Patients are coming in, they're presenting with this pattern of symptoms. Bleeding noses, headaches, listlessness, irritability, memory loss, vertigo. He was seeing this, people after people after people from the Porter Ranch area. So he funded a lab study to see if there were any common markers that might explain these symptoms. And if I could just play doctor for 1 second, those symptoms, how many of you in the room experienced any of those? Oh my goodness, look at that. More than half the room, okay. You should be talking to me instead of vice versa. All right, but let's hear from Dr. Jeffrey Nordella. And where'd he go? He was here a second ago. Oh, there he is in the back of the room. Doctor, you're on. Please come join us. And then after we hear from Dr. Nordella, we're going to have this question and answer session. So please wait around for that. And please share your questions with us. Ladies and gentlemen, MD Jeffrey Nordella, who needs more hands.
Thank you.
And if you got a spare hand for a microphone, I can hold the microphone if need be. Oh, you've got a wireless.
No, I want to see. Can you guys hear me? Okay, good. I didn't take off my jacket to fight, but it is convenient. He's just got to turn us over here. Can you turn this up? Or is that other mic a problem? Feedback? Okay. How's that? Can you hear that? All right, I'll try and talk loud without yelling. We have a lot to do. This is off now. Uh-oh. It's on this one. Okay, got to put my glasses on and we're ready to go. So we have a lot to do, a lot to talk about. Some of you have heard this before. Who was at the October meeting? Okay, so there's some new stuff to go over. We're going to go as quick as we can. We are on a time limit a little bit. So I'm going to go fast through a lot of slides and then slow down when we get to the things that we really need to talk about and really go over. I'm going to try and make this as basic as possible. Some of it's a little complicated, but we're going to move quick. Okay, you all ready? Okay. So you all know, let me just get set here, who I am, and I need to go through the disclosure. The disclosure is always that I have not been retained by any attorney firms. I do not receive any funds for doing this, and I have not from the beginning, okay? We all know the facts of the matter is the 100,000 metric tons of the methane gas and other chemicals, which are very important, other chemicals, okay? By volume, this amount is 220 times greater than the oil released during the 2010 Deepwater Horizon oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico. 16 weeks of uncontrollable release. There it is there. We've all seen that picture. It's unprecedented and toxic exposure of quantity, combination, and duration, and very important, combination. When you go to the literature and you look up all of these chemicals, you look up one at a time. It lists the side effects when you expose the human being, but no literature goes through and tells you what you were exposed to in combination. And do we have all of the chemicals? No. So again, when you go to safety and you look at this, how can anybody say it's safe when you don't know? We talked about dumping numerous toxins into your sanctuary, which is your home, causing a nuisance and trespassing, and the ultimate trespass is when these toxins affect your health, your family's or your pet's health. So we're going to go through these 7 sections. We'll go quickly. Scientific foundation. We know basically how they get into your body. They're either inhaled, they're absorbed through the skin, ingestion, or a combination of any of the 3. A interesting scientific point is they are stored in fatty tissue if they are fat soluble, and they are re-released later. So you can store these chemicals, they re-release into the tissue, into the blood, they're circulated to the organs or target organs and cause their toxic effects. Smoking and alcohol increases the risk of the side effects. Why does it do that? It affects the liver. You have a cytochrome P450 system, which actually we're going to find out metabolizes these chemicals and creates the carcinogens that then affect the DNA, which then affects the cell replication and causes the cancer. And that's what we talked about on the 3rd point here. They cause direct damage to the cells, and they are metabolized into carcinogens. They create free radicals. The free radicals then bond to the DNA, affect the DNA. The DNA is responsible for cell replication, and when that occurs, cell replication goes out of control, and what do you have? Cancer. When cancer or a tumor stays together, it is a tumor. When cancer then metastasizes, it goes to different areas, it does not stay together. It goes to the rest of the body in seeds, and that's what's the difficulty in treating it. Going over the point again, we use the biggest one, the molecule of concern, which is benzene. So when it creates the free radicals, it creates mutation. You get things like anemia. It starts to kill off the red blood cells, or multiple myeloma. Aplastic anemia wipes out the entire red cell, white cell line. And get things like leukemia, and there's all kinds of leukemias. So the benzene gets metabolized in the liver to a benzene oxide. It's what they call a oxidation reduction reaction, which you're going to find out how to treat that. You get DNA mutation, and then you get the carcinogenic effect of it. I put this slide in because I've kind of preached this from the beginning. So we'll read it together. The effects of the exposure to any hazardous substance depends on the dose, the duration, how you were exposed, your personal traits, which is your DNA makeup, your habits, smoking, drugs, alcohol, whatever, and whether other chemicals are present. This is just not a single agent. You take numerous medications. Most people can take up to 2 to 5 drugs. How are they metabolized? They compete for sites in the liver to get metabolized. It raises the serum level of other medications that you potentially take. It's a basic scientific principle. So I initiated phase 1 of a clinical study. I did phase 1, initiated, Greg? 14 years of college, I can't figure this thing out. Consultants for everything. Okay, is that where we were? Awesome, thank you, sir. Okay. So phase 1 started in January of 2016. I did it myself. I didn't have PAs do it, okay? We did a comprehensive evaluation, which was a history of physical, blood work, x-ray, and pulmonary functions when needed. Why did I do it? The number of the patients at the urgent care were rising, okay? The clinical presentations were unusual. For 19 years, I ran SCV Quality Care, which is in the Santa Clarita Valley. It was a system that was exactly like Porter Ranch Quality Care. I saw patients for 19 years. We had a base patient load of 40,000 people. We saw 120 patients a day on average with particular clinical symptoms. All of the patients that were coming in during the gas leak had a very unusual presentation. They were not the typical sinus infection. Doctor, I have a little postnasal drip, my nose is a little irritated, and I have a cough. It's lasted a couple of weeks. I'm congested. I put them on an antibiotic, maybe a nasal spray. They go out. I never see them again. That's that. It happens twice a year. This is a typical thing for me. No, they would come in with that, and you know what? I'm also vomiting. I have diarrhea. I have a rash, and I just feel horrible, and this has been like this for 6 weeks. So the clinical presentation of the patient was different, okay? At that time, this had been about 2 months, and I didn't see anything happening from the government agencies of what are we doing with this? We were all aware that the gas leak was occurring, and then we got the famous letter, or one of the famous letters, as of January 2016. And the verbiage was there's no recommendation for toxicology tests of blood, urine, or other tissues for clinical evaluation of patients exposed to the gas leak. While laboratory tests do exist for monitoring compounds such as benzene in petroleum industrial workers. Why in workers? We've been exposed for about 16 weeks. Why just industrial workers? Why not look at these? These tests are usually only for the purpose of biomonitoring. Now, I disagree with that. If I would have had that at the time, since benzene's only metabolized in 12 hours, putting it together with symptomatology and maybe changes of anemia and the leukemia cases that we've seen in the community, or the aplastic anemias, or now the 4 multiple myeloma cases that I'm aware of, it could have helped. Just my opinion. So we looked at phase 1 of the trials, 52 patients, 31 females, 21 males, age distribution 11 to 80. Cough, 79%, greater than 4 weeks. Headache, 77%. Nosebleeds, 34%. Dizziness, 28%. Nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, 23%. Eye irritation, 13%. Rash, 12%. Other symptoms, tingling of hands, forgetfulness, unfocused, dry mouth, laryngitis, change of voice, upper airway congestion, and interesting joint and body pain. Phase 2 of the study started in January of 2017. We looked at 72, or I looked at 72 patients, 51 females, 21 males, age distribution 13 to 91. Compared the first symptoms to the second symptoms of the headaches from phase 1 to phase 2, 60% to 77%. Fatigue was new now, 55%, no data in 51. Cough, 51% to 79%. Nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, and nosebleeds are about the same. This is 1 year later, health problems still existed. Other symptoms, rash, laryngitis, sore throat, sinus symptoms, memory loss, depression, hair loss, body pains, palpitation, vertigo, and insomnia. Then, because you guys asked and kept pushing and pushing and pushing, I said, okay, you want to do toxicology? So we did toxicology. So we did urine sample for VOC. A VOC is a volatile organic compound. What does that mean? That means if I took this bottle and defined this as a volatile organic compound, I'd open up the top of it and it would go away. It wants to be a gas, and it would go away into the environment. Semi-volatile compound wants to go away a little slower, okay? So we tested for VOCs in the urine, and we tested hair samples for metals. Went outside of California. Why? Because there was already a trust problem with the agencies here. So I went to Kansas City, Kansas. I flew there myself. I interviewed the doctors. I looked at the lab, and I walked through the lab. There was no political bias. I wanted to make sure that they had no contracts with the state of California to do any amount of work. The two doctors there, just point out, both PhDs. Dr. Shaw worked at the CDC. Dr. Matt Pratt was trained in cellular and molecular biology from the University of Michigan. And this doctor of Curtis Claassen, spoke with him in Germany. He is the father of toxicology, or one of them. Very, very knowledgeable, well-trained, ethical people. Moved ahead, did the study, and at the end of the study, got them to do a testimony. The anomalies of certain chemicals found in the samples were significant. This is their testimony. This group was uniquely different than other similar testings we have done. Therefore, we strongly suggest further investigations into this findings. So let's go through what we found. First of all, so you understand, what does it do when you find something in someone's urine? It's usually not the chemical that you're concerned with, it's the metabolite. So you either ingest it or get it on the skin or a combo or inhale it. It goes to the liver, it gets changed. It gets changed into a chemical, it's dumped into the blood, it goes to the kidney, you urinate it, they collect it, they put it in a machine, and they do all kinds of magic, and bingo, they come out with a level of a chemical. We tested 106 patients, 70 females, 36 males, age distribution from 3 to 79. What we found in the urine, you know about BTX, correct? Okay, BTX is a chemical used in fracking. It's basically 4 chemicals, which we'll explain, go into the first one, which is the E is ethylbenzene in the BTEX. So it's benzene, toluene, ethylbenzene, and xylenes, and the metabolite of it is phenylglycolic acid. And if you say that 3 times, you get a PhD. So the styrene and ethylbenzene, when it's ingested, goes to the liver. We'll refer to it now as PGO, and it goes to the urine. They did the analysis, and they compared California to Porter Ranch. Now, let's talk about a p-value. P-value of 0.05, you're taking 2 groups to compare, and you want to see if there's a significant difference between the 2 groups. So a large number greater than 0.05 is not statistically significant. Anything less than that is. What was the level of these 2 comparisons? 0.0005. You were significantly different in Porter Ranch than California. The groups were chose by Kansas City. Kansas City does this testing all over the world. It's not just a little mom and pop in Kansas City, click your heels 3 times and you can get home. They test all over the world. We talked about that. Moving on. Did we find benzene? No, we didn't. I never expected. We were 14 months past the repair. It's metabolized in 12 hours. We did not find any evidence of the metabolites of benzene. So then we looked at the hair samples. We looked at the anatomy of the hair first, and a lot of people say, well, hair sample has no validity. That's interesting because since the FBI uses hair samples for drug abuse, the Department of Transportation uses it because if it's positive, they won't let somebody get behind an 18-wheeler and crash the truck. So it's very valid in testing for drugs of abuse and altered mental status, motor sensory abilities to drive and handle equipment. So it takes approximately 2 to 3 months after you ingest a chemical for either ingestion or inhalation or absorption for it to show up in the hair follicle. It has to go into the blood in order, as you can see here. You can see okay, good. So to go up into the follicle, to be uptake into the protein, okay, and then up into the hair shaft, of which we measured 1/2 inch proximal here on the hair shaft. The hair shaft grows about 1/2 inch in 1 month. This is an average, and it can change. If you have hypothyroidism, it's going to grow slower, so forth and so on. But in an average, that's how it grows. So the findings here, we tested hair samples, 103 patients, 62 females, 41 males, aged 3 to 80. What we found in the hair is that 93.5% had uranium. Uranium is a metal, lithium is an element. 60% of the population in Porter Ranch had lithium. So let's talk about uranium. Uranium as compared, which we did a comparison. Porter Ranch at a 0.009, is it statistically significant? The answer is yes. And compared to California, Florida, Missouri, Tennessee, and even spontaneously had pulled from the United States, found that these control groups, it was greater. Uranium is very heavy. 238, there's isotopes of uranium. It's too deep for this conversation, but 99% of the uranium exists as 238. It gives off what we call alpha radiation. It's not beta, it's not gamma, it's the least harmful of any of the radiations. And in fact, if you took a rock of uranium-238 and you set it next to your arm, it would not hurt the tissue. If I ground it up and ate it and took it internally, it would damage tissue. But it doesn't, uranium in itself does not cause the major damage. It's not by the alpha radiation, it's actually by the atom itself. Like when you ingest lead, it damages tissue, it damages your bone marrow. Uranium atom damages more so than the alpha effect of the uranium. It's very heavy and it'll settle out, and I want to bring that point up back later. It can be toxic and it does mutate DNA. It accumulates in the bone, liver, kidney, reproductive tissue. It can cause cancer, increases lung cancer 5-fold. This is not an intermission. We're going to talk about 7-Up. 7-Up used to be called bib-labeled lithinated lemon lime soda. I don't know if that's a good PR marketing thing for this or not. I don't know. So 1929 it came out, and guess what it had in it? Lithium. Does anybody know the history of 1929? What happened in 1929? The Great Depression. Okay, so what did they put it as? It was a mood-enhancing chemical. It was lithium citrate. Is this the same lithium we use now to treat manic depressive disease? Yes. It's marketed as a cure for hangover. But it was removed in 7-Up in 1948, and I couldn't figure out or find why. Okay, and I also couldn't find out how much was placed in it, in the amounts. Lithium health impacts: nausea, diarrhea, dizziness, muscle weakness, fatigue, dazed feeling, fine tremor, frequent urination and thirst, weight gain and swelling, thyroid problems. Lithium is well documented in the literature. As we say, and apologize, and very respectfully so, that it does cause health effects, even though there's no health goal set by the EPA. It's well documented, it affects the kidney, spills over like glucose. That's why it gives you polydipsia, polyuria. It makes you want to drink because you urinate a lot. Okay, that's number one. It affects the uptake of the iodine, competes with it for your thyroid, and causes hypothyroidism. So it does have, and it also, if anybody here understands about the depolarization of a nerve, you need sodium and potassium moving through the channels of a nerve. It competes with that, and that's why and how it works for manic depressive syndromes. Affects the central nervous system and affects the peripheral nervous system. That's how it works. Lithium levels found in the hair samples. 0.0004, statistically significant? Yes. Porter Ranch, California, Florida, Missouri, Tennessee, United States. So, now, people have asked me all kinds of questions about, well, why is there so much variability? In fact, somebody just asked me that tonight prior to this conversation. Well, here's some of the answers for that. There's different people that spend different time in the community. People work in their homes, so they might be at 24/7. Kids go to school in the area, do they not? So they're 24/7. There's distribution of gases here. A study was done by, I think, the LA County Public Health. I don't know the results of it. That looked at the wind currents and the concentration. So do we think that this gas leak just spread like peanut butter right over the top of the hills and it was all even? No, I don't think so. Baseline health. Pre-existing diagnosis, hypothyroid, migraine headaches, heart disease, hypertension. A lot of people walked into this prior to the dumping of the chemicals. And do we all have the same genetic makeup here? That was easy. Do you all have the same built homes in construction? Are they all built at the same years? Do you all have the same windows? Your roofing, your north-south orientation of your home, your attached garage, the time the garage was open, the entrance from the garage, the time that you run your HVAC, is that all the same? No. So then we said, look, I say we, I got a mouse in my pocket or something, but I said, look, how long has this been going on? I don't know, but kind of dawned on me, like a tree, you cut a tree, you get rings of the tree, you can tell the age of the tree. Well, heck, why don't we look at how long the hair is? The hair growth should tell us something. So I presented it to all of the people back in Chicago that actually run the assay and Kansas City, and they said, you know, that's not a bad idea. Let's take a look at that. So we got some volunteers, and we ran this. So we looked at the hair sample from the proximal end to the distal end at 12 inches, which was about 2 years. So now I just want you to look as side-by-side comparison to slides of 4 patients, was what we did. So this is the proximal end, and this is the distal end. This is 2 years ago. Looks a little worse. Proximal, distal, proximal. Don't like that uranium on both. Distal. Proximal, distal. And I said, okay, everybody kept saying, come on, doc, that's ridiculous. 2 years. These women, no offense, please, okay, they go 2 years, they blow dry, they treat it, they chemicalize it, they do all kinds of stuff to their hair. So they're destroying it and they're putting all of this stuff in. It's got to be different. So I said, okay, let's look at this patient. Difference? Do you agree? Not agree? Okay. How about this patient? Different? Yes. Very much so. Take a look at up here. What does this stand for? Patient 5? How old's the patient? 5. How about this patient? Patient 6? She's 3. Females. We don't do that to 3-year-olds. If we do, I'm going to call the Department of Health Services on you. Then we looked at this patient. Proximal, distal, you agree? Difference? Then we even looked at 12 and 14 inches. Difference? Hey, it's a male. Now, maybe he does that. I didn't get into his social history, but. So, how do we treat all of this? The things that I've noted, sauna baths. Why? Helps you sweat. Sweat, 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 sweat. You turn this over, it's the only way it can get out. You can get out of your system, you exhale, you sweat it, or you urinate. Does, like example, uranium goes out in the stool? It does. And you can find it, and you can actually do stool samples on uranium. Another thing, just as a side effect, I just got back from a convention. Physicians all over the world. One thing did come up is a new treatment for bloody noses. Hopefully, I haven't called over. I don't know if they have it. I hope they do. But it's TXA. TXA is a chemical that they use to stop bleeding. It's nice. It can be used in all age groups, and it can be used in patients who are on thinners. Brilinta, aspirin, so forth and so on. Little chemical, you get a nosebleed. We used to take and mix cocaine with lidocaine to numb you, okay? Pull it out, get you all numb, take a silver nitrate stick, stick it in there and just burn the bleeder, okay? Take it out and go, oh my gosh, right next door, we'd cause another bleeder. Back to it, put it in, and try to do it. If we couldn't do that, shove a big packing in there, hold it, put you on antibiotics and send you home. 2 days later, pull the packing out, and hopefully you were controlled, okay? Now we have this TXA. They take a little chemical, they mix it up, they put it in, 10 minutes, pull it out, and say good night. So, good stuff. Came home from a conference with at least another treatment for you. Glutathione. Glutathione is the chemical that reverses the oxidation reaction. So, to take glutathione, it's not orally is not good because it's chewed up in the stomach and it's not bioavailable well. So what controls it is cysteine. There's a chemical, and this is some diet, you can take a picture of it, that you can get cysteine, but it's right over the counter as N-acetylcysteine or NAC, N-A-C. You can take it. As long as you live in the area, you might take it. Now, I was also made aware and actually consulted, giving some symptomatology to a new app that is available to you, okay, called Environmental Health Tracker. It's free. It was developed by a local resident, tracks symptoms. It was launched in 2017, October. 1,200 users, 29,000 symptom-related have been reported. And he just gave me a map of the distribution of symptomatology that they've seen. And this I like the best is that it's shareable information that you can potentially take to your physician. Okay? And I think, and I hate to even say this, I think that a lot of physicians are unaware of what is happening here. I was unaware of all of this. I had to start from scratch. This is not something that physicians get in medical school or training. So you have to read. I read and read and read and read and read. It's a self-education process, and I will say that most physicians aren't. I don't blame them, but it's just something that we're not aware of. So when I saw all of these patients come in, the first thing I said, I took it to my doctor. And my doctor says, well, I don't know what's going on, or you're fine, or disqualify, or whatever. Well, that's why. They just are unaware of this. They are becoming more aware. So let's look and see what's been done for the community. UCLA was first on scene when this happened, and they sent a letter out on March 19th. They tested the air in January during the blowout, January to February. They measured 25 volatile organic compounds, benzene being the one that we're referring to with that, okay? Benzene, 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 VOC. Think of that way. Many of the VOC have toxic effects, but let's just continue to look at benzene. They also noted that there was particular matter that can be inhaled deeply, because what they did is they went out, and we're going to see what it looks like in a minute, as they set canisters. And do you all know what canisters are? Okay? And they open the canisters, and the air goes into the canisters. When they trapped these, they didn't find a lot of VOCs, but what they found is that there was this kind of oily residue. And let's just say it right now, It's a petroleum-based chemical, okay? That's what they found in it. So it was negative for VOCs and hydrogen sulfide. They thought that these chemicals could make their way into the home, which is logical. So if they make their way into the home, what they did is they went into the home and they decided to do dust sampling. So they went to 7 unoccupied homes. Very important, okay? Why? Because nobody's smoking a cigarette and nobody has their garage and starts their car in the morning and fills the entire home full of fumes, which has potential benzene in it, okay? And they decided to measure the countertops, the smooth countertops. They take a wipe, which we'll see a picture of in a minute, and they wiped them. They put it in a bag and they took it to a lab and they analyzed it. And the preliminary results of 2 of the 7 homes showed benzene and hexane. So what is hexane? Hexane is another chemical. It's a hydrocarbon 6-chain, and it causes symptoms that are very significant. It causes demyelination of your nerves, okay? Usually peripheral, but sometimes central. So, based on the researchers' finding, they were compelled to advise the LA County Department of Public Health, the US EPA, and Southern California Gas. The UCLA team also advised on the protocol for future indoor testing directed by LA County Department of Public Health. The findings suggest the need for additional indoor testing. Okay, good. What had been going on at LA Department of Public Health, County Public Health? They documented a few things. During the blowout, LA Department of Public Health received 700 health-related complaints between October and February of 18. 16 weeks, 44 calls a week. Post the repair, received 150 health-related calls. February 19th to March 3rd. 2 a week, average 75 calls a week. A letter came out March 8th, 2016. I want you to pay attention right here. This message is intended for primary care, urgent care, internal medicine, emergency medicine provider. Where am I working? A unique clinic that has half family practice, primary care, and half urgent care. So we got this letter. Actions requested of providers. When evaluating patients presenting with mild headache, gastrointestinal, respiratory symptoms, or those with other nonspecific complaint, look for alternative etiologies, which means causes, other than air contamination. Avoid performing toxic tests. These are not recommended and are unlikely to provide useful data in clinical evaluation of patients. If no alternative etiology is found and there is concern regarding either ongoing or past environmental exposure, contact this doctor. Okay, stop please. CASPER study was initiated by the Los Angeles County Department of Public Health 2 days later after they gave that letter out. Okay? CASPER study, community assessment for public health emergency response. Emergency response. They did a door-to-door survey, 210 household, 3 miles radius, not sure where they got the 3 miles, that's okay. Well of SS, conducted 3 weeks after SS was repaired. Is this really an emergency response? CASPER study reported during the blowout. This is what they found. Note these symptoms right here. Headache, respiratory complaints, and GI. Just exactly what 2 days prior they told us as providers not to look for. They documented it in the patients that they were talking to. And it gets worse. This is from the field. 7 interview staff reported experienced health symptoms. These are the people that went out and knocked on the doors. They got sick. Okay, now I did find something very interesting, wanted to share it with you, is that exacerbation, and want to underline, of asthma symptoms. At this conference, I was blown away when I went and listened to these lecturers talk about the United States of America now having a diagnosis in a pediatric population, that of under 18 years of age, diagnosed by pulmonologists, of 10% of our children have asthma. Now, that might not shock you, but it shocks me as a treating physician. That is high. So how, if I anticipate, if that's can be translated to Porter Ranch, that is significant when then we start dumping toxins and gases into their respiratory tree. And I cannot tell you the amount of kids that parents reported status asthmaticus. Status asthmaticus is that your child gets an asthma attack, and you go, okay, I'll give them a Pulmonade, I'll put them on a little Decadron or a little decamethasone, they'll do fine, maybe put them on an antibiotic plus or minus and send them out, they clear and they do fine. Asthma can't break them. Treat them with a Pulmonade, give them a Zopanex, they just go right back into it, go back into it, go back into it. 3 treatments, they're admitted. So we had numerous cases of uncontrollable asthma. Point of this slide, I got off on a side point, is the field people had respiratory symptoms, what they told us not to look for. As well, comments from the field, headache, eye irritation, again, symptoms from the field that they told us not to look for. Their own employees had this when they went out and then they got to come out of the field. I threw this in on the Casper study only to state 61% of the patients got their care from family doctors, which we were, and urgent cares, which gave us the foundation of seeing the patients. 40% of the households reported noticing this oily residue. Now, I don't care what you call it, black soot, dust, petroleum, oily, it's all the same thing. And in the oil, what comes from crude oil or petroleum products is benzene and other chemicals. So, the county Department of Public Health decides to initiate a study. Good. They study 114 homes. 103 homes were the study group. 11 homes were the control group. Okay? The 103 homes, very important, unoccupied, non-smoking homes within 3 miles of the well blowout. 11 homes were 6 miles southeast of blowout. These homes, to the best of my knowledge, and I tried to find it, were occupied. Now, they're well aware of UCLA's finding on March 10th, where we're going to look at this really quick because there's only 2 things. There's a wipe test, and then there's a canister. Okay? It's the only thing they did. Wipes and canister. Okay? And they're well aware that on the wipe test, they found benzene and hexane in 2 of the 7 homes. Now, all of these agencies supposedly inputted, and I know that these people are very, very bright, a lot smarter than I am, okay? And they're making all of the recommendations on how the study should be done. So, they come out and they farm this out to a company called Layton, and I don't know exactly what they are, and they surveyed the 114 homes, they tested numerous chemicals, and they came out with a 4,700-page document. Now, I don't want to embarrass anybody. Anybody read it? Come on, show of hands. Okay, come on, show of hands. I did. Okay, no biggie, no biggie. But most people did not read this. But why did they put it in 4,700 pages? So I also want to know what it cost. Where'd the money come from? You. It's a taxpayer dollar. Here's an aerial map of where they tested. The concentrated here, and way over here, this is your control area of your 11 homes. So let's see what they found. Here's the canister they put out, got the air out of your homes, and here's the wipes. Now they wiped smooth surfaces. They didn't wipe anything that had crevices because the petroleum could have precipitated out and got into the cracks. They wanted smooth surfaces, was when I looked at this. So now we laid it out. Let's look at the chemicals first. They tested for sulfa compounds and they tested for SVOCs. SVOCs are the semi-volatile organic compounds. The blue is the air in the canister and the orange is the wipe, okay? They tested for 67 chemicals, good, and they tested for 67 chemicals on the SVOCs. On the sulfa, they tested 20 in the air, and they tested for 0 in the wipes. Not sure why. It's okay. Now we get to the metals. In the air, the blue, they tested for 30 metals. In the wipes, they tested for 16. The VOCs, they tested 75. Remember, VOCs are benzene. Benzene are bad, toxic, carcinogens. They tested for 0 in the wipes. No VOCs were tested in the wipes. It's a molecule of concern. It's a known carcinogen. We emailed them and they said, well, because it's volatile. It means it flies away. It's like, well, wait a minute. UCLA just told you you had 2 of 7 in the wipes. Didn't fly away there. Why wouldn't you test it there? So let's talk about benzene. Benzene, differences of opinion in the science literature. World Health Organization says there is no safe level. I like that. It's a built-in safety net. But we, here in the United States, through the US EPA, which this is an offshoot called the Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment, says, no, you can have benzene all the time. You just have to keep it below these levels. So they divide it up and they say, okay, chronic exposure, 3, and this is all in micrograms per liter. 3, 27, acute, 8 hours. This is directed at your workers. And I tried to crank out this study that was about 80 pages long that now has tested Chinese workers, that they came out with levels and did all these benzene. I couldn't get to a conclusion, but it was very interesting. And I could never find out, well, how is it that you can be exposed to it at 3 micros, we'll just say micrograms per liter, and 8-hour exposure is the same. Now, this affects your hematological system, and what they do is they take the human blood and they put it on a petri dish, and they culture it out so it grows and replicates, and then they treat it with concentrations. And then they look at it, and they go, wow, this is abnormal, the replication. So I never noted anything that does this do this on kilogram body weight. Does it affect and impact your children? Of course. Is the 3 an adult? Is it child? When you don't give your child 1,000 milligrams of Tylenol, you basically look at the kilogram body weight before you figure out how much you're giving him. Otherwise, you kill his liver or her liver. So, what did they find in the air canisters in the homes? Benzene was found in greater than 3, that level by the EPA, in 6 out of 103 homes. It also found 1 in 11, was positive for benzene. We know that it causes these particular cancers. This was right from the study, okay? This is a control house. This is the level, and this is the chemical. This is 5.8. I think we'd all agree it's greater than 3. Then I looked at one and found this one. This level is 29. This is greater than the 1 hour exposure of benzene. And then they sent this letter out on May 31st. As described in the summary report, the majority of the priority chemicals, including benzene, polycyclic aromatic, known as the black soot, and sulfur compounds were not found to be elevated in the air or dust in the Porter Ranch area homes. Well, wait a sec. They were found. And you never tested the sulfa on the wipes. So how can you make the statement? In the wipes, just really quickly, 16 metals, 30 in the air. Why the difference? And you're going to see as we come up to the uranium and lithium. 2 other molecules of concern really quick. Acrolein. Here's the levels. Keep this right here. We're going to cook now. 0.35, 0.35, okay? 96% of the 103 tested homes were positive for acrolein greater than 0.35, 96%. 100% of the controls, 83%, as the gentleman asked about the schools, were tested, were positive for acrolein. Acrolein comes from propene, a byproduct of oil refining and natural gas processing. Here's the chemical reaction. It hits the air, creates acrolein, and it's also released in tobacco, but these are non-smoking homes. Acrolein is toxic, a strong irritant for skin, eyes, nasal passages. Have we heard that? Causes hemorrhagic cystitis, which basically means blood in the urine, and it's also associated with an increase in lung cancer. This was the report to a homeowner. All 44 chemicals were detected below the California Environmental Protection Agency. We went ahead and used the EPA as its level. Acrolein and benzene were in the shaded area, okay? This is exactly what came from the release from the Department of Public Health. 0.35 is the EPA level. As you can see, these levels are much higher than the 0.35, are they not? These are all of the control homes. 11 homes are all positive. This level was 2.2. This level was 4.7. This was at on April 1st, and this was retested on 6/23. It actually went up. So how do they account for that? On June 23rd, we followed a second round of indoor testing. They said their benzene came down, great. But basically acrolein was detected at 4.7, went up. So what did they do? And they said a recent study of non-smoking residential homes in California reported indoor concentrations of acrolein 2.1 to 12.2 and cited this study right here. So I went in like a little nerd and read the study, and guess what? It was 9 homes in 3 counties. Okay, had nothing to do with stating that acrolein is bad for you or good for you at those levels. It just stated they tested 9 homes in 3 counties, and it was related to cooking and off-gassing from new lumber from new construction. Totally unrelated to the Porter Ranch scenario. Nothing else needed to be done. Third chemical was dichloromethane. Majority of dichlor is an environmental path to internalization, inhalation, and absorption. It's also can be metabolized, causing carbon monoxide poisoning. Here's your symptoms: difficulty, concentration, dizziness, fatigue, nausea, headache, numbness, weakness, irritation of the upper airway tract and eyes, may be carcinogenic, has been linked to cancer in laboratory animals, salivary gland carcinoma, people with pre-existing heart problems, abnormal heart rhythms. Got a lot of palpitations out there with patients complaining of it. And here was the graph. You can see California EPA 400. These are the control homes. One control home was 560, maybe more because they just give a range. And this was the patient's home. Here, one home was 860, dimethyl chloride. or methylene chloride. So as a treating physician, it just kicked out again. It doesn't like me. What is wrong? We almost went. Oh man, I am so sorry. Yeah. Patients had a significant amount of lithium in their hair. So I didn't pick up the water issue to pick up stones and throw it at anybody. What I did is I said, okay, well, where's it coming from? Got on the phone, I called everybody I knew. Got one researcher up in Seattle that did her thesis on it. She said, well, yeah, we did it because it was in rock. She said that she did a study in her thesis and it went all the way from Seattle all the way down to Mexico. And she says the further south they get, the higher it went. She says, what's your levels in your hair? And I said, this. And she goes, oh my, no, there's something else there. Talked to everyone I knew about the lithium in the hair. So I said, where do you think it's coming from? Is it coming from the air and contaminant? No. All the researchers says, absolutely not. It's being ingested. So I said, I'll look at the water. So we went in, we looked at the water. We got the sampling done. We used the lab that actually LADWP uses. And we went from Porter Ranch on down to Santa Monica. Oh, good. I'm just going to go right to it. I'm sorry I'm running behind. I definitely have to do that, though. So when we looked at the water, we came up with these homes, and we looked at uranium and lithium. So in that, we found that the uranium, because the uranium was high in the hair, we found that the average was very small. And we looked at 6 control groups. The 6 control groups were all around, and they were all independent water districts. And then we looked at the lithium, and we found the lithium level of 65.4. Okay? Then, this is what it mapped out. This were all of LADWP. These were all independent, 6 different independent water sources. These are all non-detectable. So I went, why? I don't know. Is there something that happened at Aliso? Aliso creates water, it is my understanding. And in that water, is there lithium? I don't know. What do they do with that water? I don't know. Is there an aquifer that borders the eastern and southern aspect of Aliso? There is. And then I was told, well, they don't use water in that area because there is no groundwater, and Porter Ranch doesn't receive groundwater. So I'll come back to the study. So I went into this report and looked at the 2016 drinking water, and I came up with this, and right here it lists Porter Ranch, well, that's why I can't see, Porter Ranch, and it has local groundwater it receives. And in the meantime, there was a study done, and it was out of Copenhagen, Denmark, and they studied 730,000 patients and found that there was 73,000 patients with dementia. They said, gosh, we looked at 150,000 different water districts, and we found lithium in the water at low levels. Pull that up. Between 2 and 5 was the baseline. Between 5 and 10, it increased, they found, by 22%. But if you went above 15, it decreased by 17%. Okay? The first round of our testing, I think I passed it, was 65.4. Well, that's significantly higher than 15, and it may cut down on dementia. Who knows? I don't know. So we ran 6 more tests, and the average on these 6 homes were now 91. It's actually gone up. No, different homes. So the question I have, again, wasn't to pick a stone up and throw it at anybody. The issue is, why is it positive in your hair? Why do we have 6 independent water districts around us that are non-detectable? And why do we have 65 and now 91 in a Copenhagen study that says, 15 and above diminishes dementia? Is there a third phase of that? If we go higher, do we now cause dementia again? I don't know. It needs to be looked at. So I did send Ms. Jones and LADWP 2 days prior an email, and I said, this is what I found. And they emailed me back. And they said, Dr. Nordella, we've done the testing, just as Mrs. Jones said, and this is what we did it, blah, blah, blah. But the US EPA does not have a health goal. It's like, I'm so sorry. What does that mean? Shouldn't the health goal be is to keep the people safe, as you stated? So why aren't we looking at this? First, confirm. Now, she states she confirmed. I never knew she confirmed. I never knew LADWP confirmed. I was never disclosed this. And you also invited me to a meeting. And when I said, oh, please, at that meeting, would you please bring the documents that you performed after the blowout so I can analyze those? And I never heard from you again. I apologize, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but that's what happened. So if you would like to meet, I'm all for it. So I just want to make one more point. And again, it's nothing to do but investigate. I just looked and I found. And I apologize, but you know what? I'm all about the people. So here's what I want to do. I just want to play a 5-second quick game with you. So I'm a doctor, okay? And now we have this argument in this community which just absolutely amazes me. Is it safe or isn't it safe? So we're going to play a little game, okay? And you guys are all doctors. And I'm going to come to you, and I've got 2 hands behind my back. And I'm going to come to you and I'm going to say, here you go. See my hand? That's my hand. See that? That's a bunch of pills. And in that, I'm going to tell you, doctors, I've taken these drugs. Now, I know the name of the drugs, but I don't know the name of the dose. I don't know how much I took. Excuse me. But I know the name of the drugs. Am I going to have any long-term or short-term effect of those? And you're going to go, what? Well, I don't know. And then I'm going to say, well, wait, it gets better. Here you go. That's another handful of pills. And I'm going to tell you, I don't even know what these are, and I took those too. Any long-term, short-term effects of those? I mean, really? And then we come along and we go, which this is the one that kills me. And then we make a statement as such. Please? Then it even gets worse, and I get a headache. And I got to take overdose on Tylenol. Because then somebody tells me about Prop 65. And I go, wait, what? Prop 65? Wait a second. So I start my research on Prop 65. And Prop 65 says, you know what? 1980s, mid-80s, they came up and they said, you have got to disclose chemicals when you're interfaced with the public that could be harmful. And today there's 800 chemicals on the list. If there's 800 chemicals on the list that could cause cancer or reproductive abnormalities, well, what's on the list? One of them, let's just keep it here, benzene. okay? So it's on the list. So the gas company has been giving out this disclosure and disclaimer for years. So let me get this straight. So on your everyday workings, you're giving these chemicals off to the people in the community. And if you look at the exact verbiage, if you were at or near our facility and work sites, you will be exposed to the substances on the state's list of known to cause cancer or reproductive toxicity. Okay, so that's every day. The levels are here. Now I just blew the thing out. I just exposed you to 100,000 metric tons of these chemicals, and plus, let's throw in 8 well kills, of which we have no idea what it is. And then turn around and say, yeah, there's no long-term or short-term effects. Am I the only dummy? I mean, that just does not make sense. So I am actually going to conclude right now because I know there's a lot of questions. And I apologize. I had a conclusion, but I'm going to hold on it. So we'll take the questions, or do you want to have a break, or what would you like to do? And I apologize I ran over.
Dr. Nordella, thank you very much, and it was riveting for everyone in the audience. Diane, you've been going through a lot of the questions that have been submitted. Why don't you kick it off? What do we want to hear from Dr. Nordella?
Thank you, Dr. Nordella. I think the first question that I would like you to clarify on is, how is your study design different from a traditional epidemiological health study?
It's cheap. Well, it isn't. It was myself initiated it. I said, like I said in the program, that I initiated it. I initiated it because things weren't being done. I knew someone would want this clinical data. It was a clinical collection of data. It was not done as a university level study. It was not done as a double-blind, randomized study. It was an information collection of illness of a community to document, because that was one of the big questions that was there. Are you sick? And you are. You've been exposed and you're ill.
So I think a good follow-up question is moving forward, what do you feel is important to communicate to AQMD in their health study?
I would love to see AQMD do an environmental study. Excuse me, a epidemiology study. I think it's going to be hard, but I think that would be the way to go at this time, is to look at the cancer within the community. Look at who's made the diagnosis, try and obtain the information to who's worked the patients up, a UCLA, a Children's. I know I have a handful of those cases, and look at comparison groups surrounding outside of the area that are not closely exposed to the oil and gas industry.
And then another follow-up question is, what would you have done differently if you had more resources to work with?
Well, first of all, I would have done it immediately. I mean, and which I have to say, it just absolutely surprises me. This is, and Diane, I mean, you're 2 Bruins now, but yeah, actually 3. But this is uncharted waters. I mean, this is incredible, the opportunity of the science they had here. I mean, to come out and get serum levels of benzene on patients and then follow them. I mean, it would have been incredibly revealing. And first of all, this whole issue, which I have to comment upon, the whole issue of spending $35 to $40 million to get causation. As you know, as a researcher, and is that you're never going to get causation. You don't get causation. You get probability. Your probability is greater. It's like you have a 90% of getting a cancer versus a 10%. So you're never going to get 100% causation. So if you spend $35 million or $150 million, you're not going to get that.
Okay, and you bring up a very good point, which is another question that I want to ask you. What are the advantages, if any, to collecting baseline biological samples? And if so, how can those be submitted?
Define biological. Are you talking about benzene levels? Are you talking about just a CBC? Are you talking about a bone marrow aspiration?
For example, let's say if someone wanted to submit hair or urine for baseline studies, would that benefit the understanding of what's happening and what could happen in the future, in your opinion? And if so, how would somebody get involved in that?
Well, I think the first thing to really comment about that would be very important is I think that, and I wish we had the cooperation from the gas company. If we did and they could give us the chemicals, then we wouldn't have to do an Easter egg hunt. If we knew what we were looking for, then we wouldn't have to shotgun. So if they could say, you know, this is what we use for the well kill, then we could go in and specifically look at the patient population and say, wow, okay, we have this, we didn't find anything, or we found a lot. So I think that would help us to this whole search ridiculousness of liability and on and on and on, and the attorneys and so forth and so on. So I think that would help the first. Unfortunately, that's why we did what we did, is when I went to the lab, I said, hey, what do? We don't know what these people have. They said, okay, this is the best way to do 20 VOCs, the 38 on the testing on the hair, and that'll give you a baseline on a shotgun. Okay, and that's what we came out with, the styrene and the ethylbenzene, and over here the uranium and so forth.
Doctor, a quick program note for our audience. Because we put you to the trouble of writing out the questions, we're going to synthesize a few more of your questions that we're going to ask Dr. Nordella. And then once again, as we did during the program, if Dr. Nordella is amenable, we're going to throw the floor open so you can ask your questions directly. But in reviewing a lot of the questions that were submitted tonight, a lot of individual symptoms were submitted, and people want to know the significance of it. One that caught my attention, because just anecdotally, I know a number of adult women who have had thyroid issues. And you touched on that briefly, that the thyroid uptake of, well, I believe it was lithium, can have an effect. Are we likely to see more hypothyroidism and even thyroid cancers?
Well, I don't think there's any literature that shows that lithium is linked to thyroid cancer, number one. Number two, yes, it affects and can create hypothyroidism by competing with iodine. And I want Diane to know, Ms. Jones to know, and I apologize for calling you Diane, that I am absolutely 100% open to working with LADWP to investigating this further so we can help the people. So anything I can do to help, we could look at, we could do.
And there was also great interest in the questions we saw. I mean, this fundamental question, is my home safe? Is there a way for an individual to replicate on a local scale what you have done and what these various agencies have done? Can you swab your own home? Is there a place to submit the results? Can you get an idea of what's going on in your home right now?
Yes, I think there is. And I think the biggest thing is that you have to define, are we still leaking? Are we still leaking at a lower level? Are we still exposing this community, but not to the blowout quantity, but are we still doing that? The second thing that comes to mind is a lot of people have saved their filters for their HVACs. I would love to shop out a lab, or maybe you could look at, AQMD could look at, a lab to do some form of assays. I've tried and contacted a couple, and they said that they can't do an assay on those, but that would be interesting because that would take us and date us back to the time of the blowout. But we could do the same thing. You could contact, again, Layton, and they could probably do assays, or you could do the same thing with wipes and so forth.
And one water question. Do we think these elevated levels of lithium and uranium that we're seeing are a result of the Aliso leak, or is there something else, as Ms. Jones alluded to, that's going on since we see the higher levels elsewhere in the LADWP system, long ways away from the North Valley?
Well, to address the uranium, it was interesting because When I went to Kansas and talked to them about the uranium, they said that, oh my gosh, all you guys have uranium in California or hair. I said, well, what are you talking about? And he says, well, because you get water from Colorado River. And I said, well, okay, his name is Matt Pratt. I said, Matt, excuse me, we don't, actually Porter Ranch people do not get it. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that the people in the South Bay and East Los Angeles actually get Colorado River water. The rest does not get Colorado River water, and it does come, the uranium comes over rock. So the question is also, this has not been addressed. And Matt Pratt was like shocked that I was actually looking into this. He says that people have not addressed this issue in California, and it should be addressed, and it never has been. Everybody just kind of dumps it. So that's the uranium issue. I think the lithium issue, again, should be looked at, especially in light of this study. And this might be good for them. They might find out that we're all happy because we all have very high lithium levels, and you might get a surcharge on your water bill. All I want is a percentage. I discovered it. That's a joke, by the way.
I think Diane has a couple of more synthesis questions, and then we're going to open up to the floor again. If we
Great.
may.
Yes, following up on that same line that you were just discussing, did you collect any samples during routine operations? And if so, are metabolite concentrations significantly different from the comparison group during this time?
I am so sorry, I don't quite understand. Go ahead.
After the moratorium, now that the facility is operating under normal, so
Gotcha.
So
Gotcha.
outside of the non-operational.
Gotcha.
leak.
Yes, samples are still being collected. They have not been analyzed.
Okay.
But people are still donating urine and hair, but we haven't analyzed it yet.
Okay. Great.
All right, we've covered a lot of bases. You've all been very patient with us tonight. Are individuals who have specific questions they'd like to ask Dr. Nordella?
Hey, doctor, thank you for being here. My name is Andrew. I'm actually the creator of EHT. Thank you for showing one of the maps. You reference Porter Ranch a lot in the presentation. I just would like you to explain to the community, as we see in the map with the pin plots of the symptom experience, it's valley-wide and even extends further. Can you just spend a moment and comment on the wide-ranging geographic effects of what we went through?
Well, I think that, the logic of it is that it's a gas. It's going to diffuse. It's not going to diffuse at 5 or 6 miles and hit a septum and just stop. There's not an invisible shield that it's just going to stop. It's going to diffuse out, and it's going to have its effect. The question is how far it's going to go out. You're looking at symptomatology. I think the map showed up to 16 miles. So now I would think that it's going to drop off in its intensity and its concentration. It's going to get diluted out further and further. But there's patients that have had symptomatology that I've seen that go to Woodland Hills, which is about approximately 10 miles away. So that doesn't surprise me at all. And it'd be very interesting, actually, UCLA has done the wind kind of concentration. I'm not sure what you titled the study, but again, I have not seen that yet. I don't know if that's been released or not.
Doctor, if I understood you correctly, that the certain metabolites, if they're fat soluble, can end up in the fatty tissue of your body. Is there a way an individual can get that tested for a reasonable cost to find out if you have any time bombs inside?
Well, what we tried to do with that is we initially, when I sat down with Matt, is we tried to do glutathione. We tried to pre-treat the patients with glutathione, which would mobilize out of the fatty tissue, and then run an assay on the urine. Didn't actually come out to anything, so beyond that, I'm not aware of anything.
So the folks in this room, there's really no way to find out how much benzene is metabolized, other chemicals, and then they're now in the fatty tissue.
I think the issue with the people have, that I understand, benzene has now been in their system, they've metabolized it, it is gone. It's like a drug. Let's do this again. So you take a medication for whatever that is. Let's just say you decided to take a Vicodin. You had pain, you took the Vicodin goes into the stomach, it's released in the blood, it peaks in the serum, and then it's metabolized and it drops off over a time. We have a half-life of the drug and it's gone, okay? That's if you have a one-time treatment. But if I retreat you, then it goes here, starts to drop, and then it picks up again. If I treat you again, it does the same thing. And then you dot right across and you can get a mean concentration in the serum if you continue to take your medication. And this can be a therapeutic level of any medication. If it's not Vicodin, it could be a thyroid medication, an antihypertensive medication, or whatever it is. So if you get it one time and then stop, you should be able to metabolize it. If it stays in fatty tissue, it will get re-released and then metabolized over time, but it extends the half-life of that medication. So benzene could be months until you metabolize it on the one treatment. We don't know.
And so it depends to a great extent. We've had some of these elevated episodes where the measuring records briefly for a higher period.
Right, and the most important thing about that, and I think, Diane, you would agree, is that remember that you're only measuring methane, but what travels with it? All kinds of chemicals. Do they travel in the same ratios? No. This would be an issue for AQMD to address. They don't. So is it a let's say a 3-to-1 ratio from, let's say, methane to benzene all the time? I don't think so. But I'd love to know that, which would be my second wish list to AQMD to do some form of combination methane-benzene monitoring system that could be mobile and go into the community and measure and drive here and measure and drive here and measure and so forth. I don't think we can count on the measurements of the gas meters by the gas company. You have to do this independently. Go ahead, please.
Looking at I see a lot of hands going up. Let's talk to this woman back here. Hold on one second. I'm going to bring you a microphone so you don't have to yell.
You talked about a sauna. Would it be wise to have a sauna at your house? How many times should you use it? Because I have all these levels, I was one of your testees. I want to know too, should we be taking charcoal? I'm hearing all these different things that we should put in our body to take out what we have. Can we?
Well, first of all, if you have a sauna, you need to invite me. That's one. Number two, you should, if you can afford a sauna, it's great, but I wouldn't put one in strictly for that. I'd try and go to the YMCA or something. But the second is charcoal, activated charcoal, will not necessarily work. It's not dumped back into the stomach where charcoal will bind it. It doesn't have what they call an intrahepatic circulation where it goes into the GI tract, into the liver, into the system, back into, so it doesn't recirculate. So the charcoal, I don't think, is going to be effective. So yes, sauna is good.
Let's hear from you, sir. Hang on a second. Wait for that microphone, if you would.
He mentioned earlier about the dementia, and as the different levels increase of the element, you're talking about the rerouting of the body's mechanism to get rid of the dementia occurs when the amount of that particular substance is higher in the water? I think it was the water you remember?
Well, it's not rerouting anything. What the study noted is that the baseline was 2 to 5. Between 5 to 10, it seemed to increase dementia, and above 15 plus, it actually decreased it. It was protective. What we don't know is what it does at 65 or 91.
Diane, I think you have one more question submitted from the audience.
Yeah, it's a very good question. Did you test anyone that was not visibly symptomatic?
Yes, one patient. He came in just for baselines, and that was it, and I never saw him again.
And was the results included in your presentation?
Yes.
I'm kind of curious. Did he live in Porter Ranch, and did he have any of these?
He lived in Porter Ranch, and what can I say? I remember the patient. He was male, probably in his mid-30s, and he just wanted a checkup, and he had been exposed, and he knew of the study, and he wanted to be part of it. And I said, okay, are you having any symptoms? He says, not at all. And I said, okay, fantastic, and did the blood on him, did a physical on him, put him in the study, and that was that.
And no abnormalities?
No.
With non-symptomatic, okay.
And yeah, one patient. So.
I think, okay, we're going to hear from this, one more question from the audience, and then Dr. Nordella, you mentioned thoughtfully that in the interest of time, you cut your summary. Would you like to go ahead and do the summary after we hear one more question? You think about that. We're going to go hear one more question.
Yes, doctor, I was wondering if you knew what would cause nosebleeds to come only around Christmas and Thanksgiving. I mean, you're sitting there to eat Thanksgiving dinner, and all of a sudden your nose starts bleeding for no reason at all. And this has happened like over the last 3-4 years, and there's no reason for it.
I don't know if it's naughty or nice or something like that, maybe.
Probably naughty.
No, well, first of all, nosebleeds are definitely related to heating your home, okay? When it's cold, the relative humidity is low, you dehydrate the nasal membranes. You turn on the heater, you do more so. Not saying you're old. Older patients usually have hypertension, their blood pressure is a little elevated. It doesn't cause nosebleed, it prolongs nosebleeds. So if you get a crack, it bleeds, it bleeds. You get a big pressure head, it bleeds. Those are the ones we used to have in the emergency rooms that were difficult to control and would end up with a packing. So that time of year was an issue. But now if you take and put chemicals on that, you help dehydrate the membranes. And you always get in what they call an anterior nosebleed, which is Little's or Kesselbach's triangle, and you have a problem in that area.
I'm going to ask one final question. Thank you all so much. I think we also owe thanks to Peter Lasky and his team for organizing this wonderful event tonight. Let's give Peter and his team a... Doctor, as a news reporter, when I'm doing an interview, always the last catch-all question I ask is, what's the takeaway? What do I keep on my mind as I'm driving home tonight? What's the most important message tonight?
Well, okay, hang on. Can you get me back? Okay.
You've got a graphic for it.
I do. I do. So I did come up with a conclusion, and I want to be respectful to Peter. But I thought a long time about the conclusion and what I wanted to state to the people. But I didn't want to violate his respect. But I feel I must in the sense of bringing it to the people. I'm not going to give you my opinion. You asked me a lot of questions. Turnabout is fair play. So I'm going to ask you a lot of questions. Actually, it's not a lot, just 4. And I want you not to answer these out loud. And these are not for the people just in the room. These are for our elected officials and for our media to be able to go back and think about these. Especially Patrick has covered this from day one. So, did Southern California act in good faith in its disclosure of information and its actions? No, I don't want you to answer, please. This is something you just need to think about, please. This is not to incite a riot. These are questions to you. Did public health fulfill its mission statement to protect the health of the community? Did your elected official, including the Board of Supervisors who oversees public health, live up to their roles as public servants? And in your own opinion, do you believe Aliso Canyon is safe? Good night. Thank you very much.